And BSI stands for the British Standards Institution, but that's a bit of a misnomer. Because although we have British in our title, there are more people working for BSI outside of the UK than there are in the UK. We serve about 193 countries from 31 offices around the world. We have 84,000 clients, and we touch just about every industry that you can think of. The thing that I love about BSI is that we are a commercial, profit-making organisation, but we have a purpose that we really believe in. And whilst it might sound trite, we do believe that we're making the world a better place. And what do I mean by better? I mean safer, more innovative, more sustainable, more reliable. A really practical example is you walked into this building today, probably not thinking about whether this building might collapse on you. You sat on a chair and assumed that that chair was going to hold you up. How do we know that? How do we know that when we turn on an appliance at home, it's not going to blow up? When our children hold a toy and lick it, how do we know that they're not going to be poisoned by it? We can trust those things because of standards. So at BSI, we believe we are helping to create the infrastructure that means that we can all live in a safe world. And I've used some very practical examples there, but we're moving into territory that speaks to some of the world's biggest challenges. So sustainability. How do we create truly sustainable organisations, truly sustainable products? AI. I know Esther's going to talk a little bit about that in a second. The mad, wild west world of AI, how do we make sure that that world is safe and regulated for us all? So at BSI, we have a purpose. We talk about making an impact for a fair society and sustainable world. We've been around for a long time, over 120 years. And I mentioned that we are a commercial profit-making company, which we are, but the unique way in which we're incorporated, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a second, means that we reinvest our profits in our purpose. So we're not pleasing a set of shareholders. We have a public mandate that's about the public good, and we reinvest our profits for good. Ultimately, as it says there, we want to help business and society thrive. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one part of our business, and our business touches, as I said, most industries and sectors. A critical part of our business is shaping the standards landscape. What does that mean? Well, we are the UK's national standards body. That means we have a royal charter. That means that we have a mandate to help the UK create standards that the world can rely on. We publish over 3,000 standards each year, touching, as I say, a whole range of sectors and circumstances. What are those standards? Well, as we've said, standards affect us all every day, no matter what we do, no matter where we go, the cars that we get in, the trains that we get on, the products that we use. Right there, you can see a picture of a lady working on the inside of a helmet. My son plays rugby, which is a contact sport where there is a lot of controversy at the moment about head injury. And so there's a lot of conversation going on about what kind of protection do we need to give people who play that sport to help them stay safe. I work for a company that is involved in that conversation. So we are literally keeping people safe. Could we just go back one? So standards there, as we've said, define good practice. They help us agree what good looks like. And when I say agree, we're talking about a whole range of stakeholders. So those stakeholders may be businesses, government, regulators, consumers, clients, a whole range of people have to come together around a given topic to decide what good look like. We've talked about the fact that standards can help people. They also help business. If you're running a business and you're selling a product, you want to be able to say that your product is being developed to the highest standards. You want to be able to give your clients trust in that you're doing the right thing. And as a result of that, standards should help growth because they can help companies become more innovative, expand their markets, and we've talked a little bit about sustainability also. So standards are pretty central to the economy, actually, pretty central to the way that we do business. Thank you. So that's a little bit about BSI. What I wanted to talk a bit more about was diversity and the role that diversity plays in our business. So here you've got a statement from our CEO about why diversity is important to us. If we are developing standards for everyone, then we have to make sure that everyone's voice is involved in the shaping of those standards. We all know, sadly, that standards can be set by the powerful, the noisy, the rich. And we believe passionately that if standards serve us all, then we should all have a voice in shaping them. The controversy around AI is often, particularly in healthcare, is about the fact that it can exclude significant groups of people because of the limited demographic of the people who are defining it. And we're trying to change that. So here you've got a statement from our CEO who's talking about why diversity is important in our organisation. I'll be the first person to say we have a long way to go on this. We are not perfect, but we have started the work to think about how do we attract more diverse voices in our organisation? How do we build diverse talent for the future? If we're a truly global organisation, how do we make sure that we can speak to the whole range of people who might interact with our business? Thank you. Now, I'd like to believe that most people would agree there's a moral imperative around diversity, that it's just the right thing to do. But even if you don't believe that, I think it's important for all of us to know that the business case for diversity is stronger than ever. There is mounting evidence that more diverse organisations are more successful organisations. So this is just some data from a McKinsey report that's well worth a read if you're interested in it, that looks at the impact of having women on a board and then the impact of also having ethnic diversity on a board. And the shorthand is what we would expect. You know, the more diverse the board, the more successful the company. So why do I share that with you? I share it with you to say, as you are building your career, you do not have to earn the right to share your voice in whatever forum you choose to share it. We hope that you might come and share that voice with us in making standards, but wherever you share it, know that you are making your organisation more successful because you are bringing a perspective and a life experience that may not otherwise be heard. So it's not that diversity is just a good thing to do or the right thing to do. It's a commercially powerful thing to do. And I think we need to know that when we're standing up to say that. Thanks. Let's push on. I want to just say very quickly a couple of things about an initiative that we've done at BSI that we think has helped us kind of get better at promoting and developing diverse talent. We do all the things that other organisations do around succession planning. So, you know, we do the training and we do the work with leaders to try and make sure when they're thinking about the future, they're not just recruiting in their own likeness, but but that they're actually thinking more broadly about the skills that they need. We try to challenge them about what diversity looks like for their team. But this programme here, we ran a couple of years ago. So it was a diversity mentoring programme where we matched our most senior leaders, so the most senior leaders in our organisation, there were 10 of them. We matched them with colleagues from underrepresented groups around our business. And we deliberately set those up as mentoring partnerships. So the colleagues, who were largely more junior, they were all more junior, had as important a mentoring role with their senior leader as the senior leader did for them. Because what they were doing was opening the eyes of the senior leader to a set of life experiences that they probably otherwise wouldn't have had. And it was a really mixed group. We had women, we had people of colour, we had representatives from the LGBTQ+ community, we had people from countries that we didn't normally have access to power. And some of those relationships, 2 years on, are still going and are very much kind of two-way. And the reason I spotlight it is because I think if you want to make a real difference in succession planning and developing talent for the future, it's remembering that it's a human process. We can have all the systems in the world, but we need the humanity. And there you've just got a quote, we can go back, you've got a quote there from one of our senior leaders about why he found this so invaluable. And he said that he felt that working with his partner meant that he was stepping outside of his usual interactions to get a perspective that he wouldn't otherwise get. And he said, you know, this gives us more pixels, a more granular picture of what our culture really is in our organisation, and more insight into how we can help diverse talent to develop. So let's go back to standards and talk about what does that mean for this. I'm going to hand over to Sarah to say a little bit about this, and then we'll have a chat with Esther about her experience.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, this is working. So yeah, essentially standards development is a group of people coming together to shape what good looks like. And our role as the UK's national standards body is to make sure that we've got the right people involved. So there are standards makers, and there's over 14,000 of them across sectors coming together to shape what good looks like and making sure that standards continue to do good for future generations as well. Individual experts of all ages and backgrounds can get involved, and sometimes the misconception is that young people are not as experienced as maybe the more experienced standards makers on the committees to get involved. But that's not true. You could have an innovative way of thinking, you could have an idea, or you could have experience that maybe more experienced individuals don't have. So I think that's something that's crucial. Don't be put off by not having that experience. If you think you want to make change and you want to have an impact in changing something across society, whether it's in sustainability, digitalisation, it could be mental health and well-being in the workplace, modern slavery. You know, these are some of the areas that standards impact and you could get involved in. So it is a huge range of individuals involved, and it doesn't always have to be based on your experience. Innovators, so if you've got an idea, you know, have a look and see what you can get involved in, see what standards there are in your field. You could be a nominated representative of a stakeholder organisation, so this could be an industry body, a charity, a government department. So by ensuring that all voices are heard, we're making sure that the standards will impact society now, but also in the future. So yeah, if you are passionate about getting involved in standards, we do want to hear from you. And as Amanda mentioned earlier, you know, an example of this is medical devices. So some medical devices don't detect darker skin tones. Some soap dispensers don't detect darker skin tones. So it raises that question of who was in the room when the standards were being developed and those decisions were being made about how the product was being made. And that's why we're being really intentional in standards development, in having the right people creating those standards and having their say. So I think it's crucial that we're coming to these kind of events, spreading the word about standards, because again, when you asked the question earlier about who had heard about standards before, it's a common theme. People just don't know enough about standards and the benefits of getting involved. So by coming to these events, partnering with BYP, and reaching out to a wider audience, we can try and get enough stakeholders involved in standards to help shape a better future. So yeah, that's a little bit more about kind of the who is involved, I guess.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And just one thing I would add before I come to Esther, actually, which is that we genuinely believe that standards change the world. Now, that may make us sad, but we genuinely do believe that. And I think many of us want to have an impact in the work that we do that means that we change the world. You have an area of expertise, an area of interest that you could be shaping. And I think that's your invitation, isn't it? And so I want to hear a bit from Esther, who's actually doing that right now. So Esther, tell us a bit about you and how you came to be a standard maker at BSI.
So I'm the head of tech policy at the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. My background is quite varied. So I studied software engineering while I was at university, and then I've been working initially with the Big Four in technology audit roles, and then moved on to this role. And in this role, my main responsibilities are, well, two things. So one, it's to influence policy and regulation around technology, so particularly emerging tech, so AI, blockchain, everything that's coming up. And that often involves liaising with regulators or government officials, or just convening discussions around these topics. And the other side of my role is thinking about how these emerging technologies will impact the role of accountants. So what they do, what skills they should have, therefore what we should be having on in the accounting training qualification, but also what sort of CPD accountants should have to continue to be relevant in a tech-enabled world. So I'm originally from Kenya, although I've been in the UK for 20-something odd years now, which is probably how old some of you in the room are, and tells how old I am. But I bring to the standards making process my experience of being African, of being female, of being black, mixed in with my experience of the UK as well. So I think you talked as well about what got me into standards making. I can say that in my previous roles in technology audit, I did come across standards. So not necessarily to audit against, but to get a sense of, if I'm auditing an area, what does good look like? What sort of controls should be in that area? That's where I came across standards. And when I came into this role, I was aware in the new areas like around artificial intelligence that guidance was out there, but then not necessarily everyone knew about it. So I had spoken to some people at BSI before, and I sort of got them on a webinar to talk about standards around AI for the members, chartered accountants. And through that process, they then recognized that within the committee that they had around artificial intelligence, they didn't have any representation from accounting and auditing. So I was then invited to join that committee. So I've been on it for, I think, a year and a half or something like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'd love to know, what would you say you have personally got out of that experience? So, yeah, what's it given you as a professional?
Yeah, I think a lot of it you've mentioned before, but the biggest one is being able to shape where society goes around technology. So a topic like artificial intelligence, there's loads of opportunities, but there's also lots of risks associated with it. So you mentioned things like bias, but then there's also deep fakes and what sort of crime that enables. There's things around confidentiality of data. So a lot of issues that need exploration. And I think being able to be a part of the group that helps solve some of those issues or presents potential solutions for how to navigate those issues. So there's standards like around risk management and cybersecurity and AI management systems. So being a part of that, I think, is really rewarding. The other thing I would say is, you mentioned like standards are developed by a group of people, and the perspectives are really different. So for me personally, being able to hear and learn from other people on the committee as well is really good in terms of my own development. So the standards are developed by consensus, and you can imagine how tricky it can be to get everyone to agree on a point of view, and that's where the focus is more on consensus, so that general agreement. But the discussions are really rich. You get to hear from a lot of people. The networking is great, so you get to know people thinking about the same things in different industries and different spheres. So that's really positive. And I think it has benefited my career as well, because when you're outside the standards making process, the awareness of what's happening in the standards world you might not be at the forefront of that as much. So being in the committee, you know what's happening with regulation, you know what's happening with standards development. So yeah, I think it's really rewarding.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Sarah, perhaps to build on that, if somebody's thinking, do I have the time and the energy to commit to something like this, what would you say to them?
I think I would say definitely just do it and find out more, because not only is it an opportunity to kind of, like Esther was saying, network and kind of meet, such a range of people, a range of stakeholders that are having this impact, but also the skills development, those crucial professional development skills that are relevant for your day-to-day role, consensus building, communicating with impact, negotiating. It's all these things that you can learn alongside gaining knowledge of standards, which are so valuable for your career development. So yes, whilst it's a professional volunteering role, having that alongside your day-to-day role can open up a lot of doors, and can, when you're going to organisations and you're applying for these roles, the fact that you've been involved in developing these standards on a national and sometimes international level, that's really impressive for organisations. So, and in terms of the time management, if you can get that support from your employer and you have that good relationship, then it can work, and it is manageable to do that. So
brilliant,
yeah.
Thank you. Speaking of time management, I want to be respectful of your time. How are we doing? Have we got time for some questions? 3 minutes. Okay. So are there any kind of burning questions that people have? We can do some now, we can do some later. Is there anything that's on your mind from what you've heard? Yeah, go for it.
I think, first of all, thank you for the talk, it was amazing. But I just have a question in regards to... my question's a bit... I'm trying to still make sense of it in my head, but in terms of making standards, everyone has their own standard for something, so it can be quite subjective. So what are the methods that you use to kind of make an objective standard that it won't upset other people, but then it kind of... Because I know it's kind of like on a general consensus, but then what do you do in the sense where those that have different standards, like they can also be happy, or they can...
Yeah, so how do you accommodate kind of different views and perspectives? Esther, what's your experience of that, actually having worked on a standard? How do you arrive at consensus?
So in terms of which standards are developed, how it works is that there'll be a suggestion put forward for a standard, and that will go to the different committees to discuss and vote on. And it's the same with the positions that we present. You vote, so everyone in the committee has the chance to vote and put comments along with their votes. And then aside from that, we have meetings where we discuss the position. So someone could have voted one way, but then in the discussions coming off of that, then there's more agreement and alignment. I will say it's quite difficult to get 100% of people agreeing, but the aim is to get general consensus in terms of what standards are developed and our positions on the standards.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Got a follow-up?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that as well. I think what we've said about making sure all voices are heard, I think that's a crucial part of that as well. Because when you've got fair representation and you've got all voices having their say, it becomes more difficult to challenge that standard and what the standard is trying to achieve. And that's part of the work that we're trying to do. So, yeah.
You basically answered my second question, because I wanted to use the example of, like, let's say a medical device that can't see or detect darker skin, but the standard was set. So what about the people in the room making the standards, even if it's a general consensus sort of thing? What if there is that one person there that their voice doesn't get heard, or it gets overpowered by everyone else, but that one voice can actually have prevented the bigger issue of, like, outrage, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly that. You're standing up, which means that I think you're going to make us wrap up.
I think our time is done. Can we give them a round of applause?